I think it probably is a big challenge for most solopreneurs to learn, because we all think no one will ever do it as good as me. That's utter rubbish.
When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into episode 43 of the Driven Crowd Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Snellings. My guest today is Andy Naylor, founder and CEO of Naylor Body Design, the online health and fitness solution for business executives worldwide. Andy's competed and won men's physique competitions at the national level and has coached many more to do the same. Having moved from the UK to Dubai, Andy aims to serve the top 10% of executives and aid their struggle to maintain peak performance in all areas of their lives. Andy leads his expert team in the quest to achieve their mission for each of their clients, which is to be the last coaching company they'll ever need. Andy, welcome to the Driven Crowd Podcast, my friend.
Good morning, Scott. Absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And it's morning for me. It is not for you. It is about 8 o'clock at night for you, I think, right?
This is correct. I think it's 7 p.m. Just 7:15 for me right now. So yeah, I'm in the desert of Dubai. So always well ahead of everyone else in terms of time zone, which means I get to get up and get a lot of work done before anyone else gets up, which I always find quite useful. But yeah, morning for you. What time is it for you? Did you say 9?
It's 9 a.m. here in Texas. Yes, that's right.
Gotcha.
And so definitely going to want to get into how you ended up in Dubai. But first off, walk us through your background. Where did you grow up? How did you get started in the bodybuilding business?
So yeah, obviously from the UK originally, and was born in a very small town called Wisbech. Left that very quickly. Ended up in a larger city called Nottingham. Met my wife there. We moved to then where we have been living for a very long time, which is just outside of Leicester, which means people might know for the football team Leicester City, which won the Premiership once, and probably once only a few years back. So we lived in a little town outside of that. We still have a home there, and I guess that's where I started running a business in terms of PTing. So I started PTing people there in that town, and that's where the birth, I guess, of the online business sort of began. That's also where I started sort of competing. I think when I started the company, I wanted to legitimately have a reason for people to want to come to me as a trainer. And so, of course, competing is one of the ways to do that. There's many ways, but one of the ways is to compete to get proof of concept, because ultimately, if you can put yourself on stage and in really good shape, not that that's a goal for everybody, and certainly even for our clients now, I wouldn't say that's a particular goal, but if you can prove to someone, hey, look how far we could take this particular thing, generally that gives, it helps me to understand that you kind of, well, at least know what you're talking about. So that's where the sort of competing element started. And really, I got into competing late. I think I was 37 when I competed for the first time, which already made me masters. So it put me in the masters. Anything over 35 where I competed was masters, or just the oldies, I think is what they're trying to say. So I competed in masters in a few national level competitions, won those, competed for the last time when I was 39. And was going to carry on competing, actually. I had a big goal to move from men's physique, which I was particularly successful in, to move into classic physique, because the best body part I had are my legs by miles. But when you compete in men's physique, you have board shorts on, so you essentially cover your legs. So the best body part I had, I was covering. So I thought, I'll go and train and compete in classic. And then essentially the business just took off. And I just literally overnight decided, okay, following this competing goal does now not serve me in any way at all. I need to go and focus on the growth of the company, because now, suddenly there were 15, 16, 20 people inside the company, and my responsibility level, of course, jumped up. And I thought, well, when you go off and compete, it's a very self-absorbed, in a good and bad way, sport. But also it's extremely difficult to get to the end of competing. The last few weeks of dieting, the last time I did that, I barely knew my own name. I could hardly hold a conversation, let alone run an international company. So I decided that was the end of competing. I still train as if I was going to compete. I still put everything into that, but it's just when you compete, it's black and white. You remove so many other things out of your life and ultimately just focus on that. And that made no more sense to me. So that was the end of competing. And around the same time, that was sort of then me really moving over here to Dubai. And I don't know if you want me to jump in that now, but that was really sort of that's the sort of very quick origin story, the very short version, I guess, up to this point.
Absolutely. Well, hearing you mention all of those UK towns, I think those of us who are Ted Lasso fans, most of those names sound familiar to us from watching that show. So yep. I guess let me start with the decision to quit. Maybe not quit's the right word, but stop your competing to really focus on your company. It's so hard for those of us that are goal driven. We have this goal laid out for us and we put everything we have to go run towards that goal. You had a couple of goals, right? You had the bodybuilding goal, and then you also wanted to build this company. What was the thought process behind, you know what, this is something that I've been working towards for so long, but that's not in the best interest of the company, so I'm going to stop. How difficult of a decision was that, and what was your thought process going through there?
It sounds like it could have been very difficult. It was literally overnight and one of the easiest decisions I've ever made, which is kind of odd because I had put so much into going from, even from the first show, competing for the first time in 11-week prep, literally turning off the majority of my other areas of my life and just focusing on that. And then I think I put 14, 16 months into building more muscle and then competing again. It was all I'd done for those. It's probably about 5 years of my life I think I'd put into it, which ultimately is a very short period of time. Anyone who's a long-term, high-level, competitor is going to look at that, but it's only 5 years. But I got into it late, and it was 5 years. And what was happening was that the company was evolving from essentially, we will just help anybody get into shape, because that's where a company starts. We'll help anybody.
Right.
I was going to go down the route of prepping people for shows. That's quite stressful. It's stressful enough prepping yourself for a show. Well, prepping for a show. We'd prepped quite a number of people to be very, very successful, but it's extremely labor intensive from a business perspective. And I thought, well, okay, if I'm going to build a company and grow it and scale it, I don't feel that that's the best thing to do. And what was happening was at the time the company was growing quickly. We were scaling quickly. I was getting involved in masterminds, and I was starting to really reevaluate the avatar, the demographic, the person we wanted to help, the individual, what they were struggling with. And it was starting to sort of become clear to me that I was beginning to understand what it really felt like to be a CEO of a company, run a company, hire people, train people, build, scale, the stresses and strains around that. And I thought, well, I guess I'm quite lucky because I've got all this sort of health and fitness stuff in place. I understand all of these other things. What happens if we go and look for the people who are feeling the same as I am running the company, but don't know all this other stuff? Bingo. That's how I suddenly realized, I know exactly who I want to go and help. Because if I talk to someone in that position, I know exactly how they feel, which not a lot of fitness coaches necessarily do. And that's not a bad thing, but a lot of fitness coaches are solopreneurs, which is great. It's exactly what I was for a very long time. And there are stresses and strains in that type of job because you're putting on all the multiple hats. But as soon as you stop putting on the multiple hats and you're actually now training departments and scaling things out, it's a different type of pressure and a different strain. And so I then pivoted the company to start to look after those individuals. So we immediately then started looking for high-level execs, CEOs, presidents, VPs, all business owners, all these sorts of individuals who I could talk to on a level. And then I started to realize, well, they're really not interested in me being on stage. In fact, that's quite off-putting to them because it's not their goal.
Right. And
I was like, okay, that's it, done. Why am I now chasing that? Because I knew that I was never going to be good enough to go after like the actual goal that everyone wants to get, which is to become an IFBB pro. I was never ever going to be good enough to do that. That's not me being pessimistic. There's a reality involved. I just don't have the genetics for that. I started too late. So I thought, well, I'm chasing after something that now, if I add another 10 pounds of muscle, it really doesn't change my life. I can hang out at sort of 12% body fat, a few veins on my abs all the time. Like, fine, I don't need to be any leaner than that. So now chasing after this goal of achieving another plastic trophy, just overnight made no sense to me. It didn't mean I've fallen out of love with that side of things. It just doesn't make sense for me. But going off and growing the business and helping hundreds and thousands, tens of thousands over the next few years, men and women in a situation where they're running a company or they're high level in a company, they're probably super successful and focused on their business, or they're, in being in someone else's company, and they're probably family, men and women, and very successful there. But what they tend to do is, behind those two big areas of their life, they sacrifice themselves knowingly and unknowingly, and suddenly get into their 45s up to maybe even 60s and realize actually they're quite often, what a lot of people will say is, I'm disappointed in myself, Andy. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I'm extremely successful in this, and this, but I just haven't been able to put the same discipline into myself. And that's super common. So it then made that's how easy it was for me to look and think, okay, we can very simply, pivot the company to look after these people. Therefore, I need to align myself with that goal, I guess. And the competing thing just made no sense. It's come back to me now and again. I'm like, if I'm working, if it has, I'm not saying it hasn't. If I'm working less in the business, I'm going to need something else in my own life to keep me focused, and maybe competing is it. But if I'm honest, it would be a shock to me if I ended up on stage again. I'd probably end up doing a photo shoot. I'm probably due a photo shoot, which is enough of a goal to kind of keep me focused on something, but it's nothing like standing on stage and having to go and compete. I've done that. I've won national levels. I know what it feels like to be the last name called out. I know what that feels like, and it's damn awesome. So I've kind of ticked that box. But now, in terms of who we are here to serve, them seeing me doing that actually alienates them for the most part. So it became unaligned with the business mission, really.
Sure. I assume most of the executives do not have dreams of standing on a stage, in their board shorts or bikini underwear and having everyone judge what they look like. So you said a ton of interesting things there. Let me go back to when you were a solopreneur. You were a fitness coach, working with bodybuilders who were training, things like that. And all of a sudden, you started getting too many clients where you could personally help. Was there a battle with your ego in terms of hiring people and letting them train your clients, as opposed to you doing everything because you knew best and you didn't trust anybody else to do it as good as you?
Luckily not, because I'd learned that lesson while working in someone else's company. So before I had my own business, I was managing sales teams in daily newspaper advertising world. And I remember learning a lesson where we had a particular project on, and I was a sales manager in one newspaper, and we had a sister newspaper not very far away. And the manager of two of us, so me managing one area and someone else managing another, the person above us said, why don't you go and get this other person to come across and help you do this particular thing? And I was like, yeah, but it's my team. I want to do it. And they're like, yeah, but you're kind of struggling, and this person has already done it. They're going to be able to help you. And what you said to me was, at the end of the year, when upper management look at the bottom line and revenue, they won't care how you did it. They'll just see that your department did it. And if that meant you brought someone else in to achieve it for you, then that was smart, wasn't it? And I was like, I see how this thing works. And so I learned that lesson all the way back there. So no, I got to the point where I think it's 87 clients on my own, which sounds like a lot, but technically I was able to manage 87 clients and successfully and grow the business. And literally it was just me. And I think the first person I hired in was actually a virtual assistant to help me run social media, because we were in so many conversations on so many platforms. It was just impossible for me to manage that and speak to potential clients coming in and help the 87 I'd got. So then I brought in, I think that the first major person we brought in was Shana in terms of the coaching team, and she is now head coach. And I'm now at the point where I look for people who are better than me in every part of the business. I'm now at the point where for me to take the business to the next level, the people I'm now bringing in need to be better than me. I can't now be the bottleneck for any department in the business. I encourage, I encourage every element of the business we challenge each other in the best way possible to get the best out of everything. I do not want to be the best at everything. In fact, I'm looking, the coaches now who are in the business, are all amazing. They're all technically more qualified than me, and they make me proud every single day when they are the ones who are, getting results for clients. I'm happy to say, in fact, that was the first department where I'm like, okay, cool. I'm here. I will impart all the knowledge and experience that I've picked up over the years, run with it. And now we're doing the same thing in terms of a marketing department, in terms of setting and sales, and all the departments that are required in the business. And really, at the moment, it's actually the sales element of the company, whereby, as you can imagine, it's very difficult for someone to come in and sell a product or a program better than the person who created it. So I'm always going to be, hi, my name's Andy. I am the founder and CEO of Naylor Body Design. It's my name above the door. Suddenly that gets immediate more respect. But my goal now is to find people who can come in and take that mantle from me. And then I get to sort of, push myself out the back door just slightly a little bit. So no, there's no, luckily I learned that ego lesson. I was taught that, I probably learned that 4 or 5 years before this company began. So it's been quite easy for me. Finding people who are better than you at something is challenging. It's just where you look. And also that sometimes when people come in, they don't want to immediately point out that they're better than you at something, because no one wants to come in and upset the CEO.
Right.
Whereas right now, it's exactly the opposite to me. I'm like, come in and this is the problem, go fix it. Like I'll give you any, tools that you need. This is the problem, go fix it. This is what I've brought you in for. And that's a wonderful thing. I think it probably is a big challenge for most solopreneurs to learn, because we all think no one will ever do it as good as me. That's utter rubbish.
Right.
There are people out there that could do every part of my business miles better than me, way more experienced than me. And also possibly because they're not so emotionally invested in the same way that I am, because sometimes my decision-making process would be different than somebody who comes in who's less emotionally, they haven't been in the business 22 years. It's not their name above the door. They can make a much clearer decision with less emotion. I think that can be a real benefit. So no, I very much welcome people coming in and challenging what we've been doing so far, because the mantra of the company is be the last coaching company someone ever needs. Like I keep saying that over and over again, because I literally cannot think of a goal above that.
Yeah.
I don't know many companies that do what we do that are technically striving for that. And even now today, we have a coaching meeting today where we're building something out that happens over the first 3 months of someone being in the program. And it started as just a few ideas, and then it sort of like blossomed into this, hang on a second, if we're going to do this, why are we doing it? And one of the guys is like, to be the last coaching company they ever need. And I'm like, right. So every decision we make, everything that we build it in the direction of that. Because if we do that, whether we can or can't reach that goal for every individual person, like we can't guarantee that. But if we are aiming towards it, we can't be going too far wrong at that particular point.
And I think when you have a vision that's that strong and that's that clear and shared by everybody, it makes those decisions so much easier, doesn't it? Does this align with our goal? If it does, awesome. Let's push forward and see if it's something that'll work to get us to be that company. If it doesn't, cool. It was a great idea. Is there anything else we can extract from it to make us better? No? Okay, awesome. Then let's go ahead and archive that idea. It makes that decision making so much easier. One of the things that you mentioned is, the difference in somebody who is subjectively looking at it and objectively looking at it. And earlier you mentioned getting involved in masterminds. And I'm involved in a couple of masterminds myself. And it is amazing how this problem that I go to the mastermind with has stumped me for months. And within about 32 seconds, as soon as I say it, there's 3 different solutions that work. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I am, in the business every day. I love it. It's mine and our teams, and you're so emotionally involved in it that you don't always have that clarity. At what point did you get into the mastermind group, and have you found that same thing?
So I got my first business coach, I think it was, or I want to say something like mid 2019, somewhere there. And I was like, okay, I'm thinking of going fully online. I don't want to be an in-person trainer anymore. I want to go fully online. I've been kind of trying to do it, not really getting any traction, not sure how to do it. It seems to be the utopia for all PTs. And so I hired my first sort of business coach, who was absolutely responsible for getting me essentially off what we call off the gym floor. So I'm now no longer an in-person personal trainer, and I'm living the online trainer life, which is what everyone wants. What that technically means is I'm either sitting in my kitchen working for 10 hours a day, or I'm going off down a coffee house and sitting in there and working. So that's what the online trainers world looks like when you first start doing it. And so I had a really good experience there. I think that was a certain period of time that course was for. In the background, all of a sudden, well, that happened. I think I went fully online in the September. 6 months later, COVID hits. I was already a fully online business by that point. Kind of the luckiest business decision we ever made.
Amazing
we lost
timing.
we lost half of our customers immediately, and then the course just exponentially grew after that and came out the other side probably stronger and ahead of so many other companies. But in the meantime, what was happening was, I was actually, through COVID, obviously, only one of the things we could do was go outside and walk. So I was doing a lot of walking, listening to a lot of podcasts. And there was one particular podcast from my mentor, Chris, who he was both coaching individuals like we do, but also beginning to coach coaches. And so I was listening to this podcast for a long time, thinking to myself, this could be the next person. This could be the next route. I think there's something here. And I listened for a long, long time, and eventually joined what was their original mastermind called Apollo. Joined that, and very quickly then, I think that was actually not with Chris himself. Very quickly, I was having results, reached out to Chris and said, basically, I went fishing for him and said, I want to work with you. We struck a deal, that started. And then it was only a few months later, I think he said, oh, there's now a few more people who've joined this. We're thinking about having a mastermind. And guess where he was living at the time? Yeah, he was in Dubai. That's where the Dubai link is. So he'd moved out here with his partner at the time, and I think they got stuck here. They literally couldn't get home. So he bought a place, stayed here, and then started to build his business from here. And so I think it was a January of, 2022, beginning of 2022, something like that. They had a business mastermind. And what happened was I came out for 3 weeks. The mastermind was right at the beginning, so I did that. Met a lot of other online trainers, and it was an insane experience, quite frankly. I didn't stay for 3 weeks. I stayed for 5. By the time I'd left, I'd set up a business here. I'd got a bank account, a mobile phone. I'd invested into a 2-bed off-plan apartment to rent out at some point in the future, and then went home and said to my wife, "Yeah, I'm thinking we're going to leave the UK, and we're probably going to move to Dubai." At which point she was like, "Okay, what?"
I'm sure that was the censored version of what she said.
Yes. So it was sort of a, but it was, in the same way that sometimes decisions are so easy. Although this one had a lot more mechanics and things that needed dealing with, I just thought to myself, this environment here, the people here, the fitness culture, the lifestyle, the financial benefits, everything made all the sense in the world to me. But we still have a life in the UK. So, of course, and we still do have that. My wife goes backwards and forwards, and we just before I literally moved out here full time, we'd moved out of the home that we had lived in for 25 years, and we'd bought an off-plan home back in the UK, which took us a lot to get in it in terms of, financial things. It was a big stretch for us. We moved in. I was in there for a whole of 11 days, and then moved to Dubai. So,
oh wow.
But the mastermind, that was sort of how that happened in terms of me kind of getting into that mastermind, and then that's how Dubai happened. And then I've sort of joined and rejoined and worked with Chris and in that mastermind for a while. Now really is technically the only moment where I'm not actually in one. There's nothing that I need right now from a mastermind. We have enough information to scale to the point. I think what I get from a mastermind is sometimes clarity, more often than not clarity. And I think all humans do better when we're told what to do, basically, which is coaching. So if I'm going to have a coaching company, I very much believe in coaching. And I've generally always had mentors around me, whether that be in me competing, music production, because it was something else I had a lot of mentorship in, business. And I'm always on the lookout for things like that to invest in, either that me personally or the company itself, to keep moving forward. Because the moment you're not doing those things and moving forward, everybody else is. So you're technically going backwards. I think masterminds to me, it's a great way, not only the mastermind itself, but if it's a good one and it's full of the right people, it's normally the experiences, it's normally experiences that others are having that you can be like, one, it can be very much be like, oh, everyone else is struggling with the same things as me. Oh, I'm not a failure. That can be quite useful.
Absolutely.
Or, it's normally in a mastermind, people are quite happy to share information. certainly the ones I've been in. So people who are essentially in direct competition with us, we just share information willingly because we're very all aware there's enough business out there for us all. Like, we don't need to worry about that. There's 8 billion people on the planet. None of us are going to run out of potential clients and people to look after. And so I think that's kind of the thing that I like about Mastermind. And also Dubai is very much like that. It attracts like-minded, growth set people. And the more you are around people like that, the more it breaks through your own limiting beliefs and BS stories about why you can't achieve something. Because I know people who are living in the building next door to me who do exactly what I do, who generate 5 times as much a month that I do. So I'm like, well, there's absolutely no reason why we can't do that. So it just breaks through that mold for you. And I think if you hide yourself away and don't do these things, you immediately put barriers in front of yourself. Well, they can all do that, but I can't. That's not going to work for me. That's just a limiting belief. And I think masterminds are great for not just the knowledge and information, but busting people out of those limiting beliefs as well, for sure.
Yeah, that abundance mindset is absolutely game changing, right? You have that abundance mindset, and then all of a sudden you're surrounding yourselves with these people who are super successful and willing to share all of their thought processes and how they're doing things, their operations with you. And that's an immediate value driver. All right. So you mentioned, and it's funny, you mentioned the exact same term, avatar client. We're actually talking about avatar clients in one of my masterminds right now. And when you first started, kind of like most businesses, you're just trying to find somebody who can pay for your services. You're not really directly advertising to a specific type of client. So for those who aren't aware of what an avatar client is, explain that. And then at what point did you really get that concept and start niching down to focus on an avatar client?
Yeah, great question. And you're absolutely right. When you first start, you're like, we'll just coach anybody who'll pay for it. And that's kind of every business at the beginning. So there's also that, which is fine, because at the time, you just cash flow. Without cash flow, your business is going to die. So most people are going to start by coaching anybody that they can. But also in terms of coaching, it's quite good because it gives you a very broad selection of people to work with, which is going to give you a lot of knowledge and experience. So there's nothing wrong with that, actually. And normally, and also you sort of think, I really don't want to, I don't want to tailor my marketing too specifically because of all of the people it's not going to attract. And that was quite a difficult hurdle to get over, to say we look after X, Y, Z, and that's basically it. It's quite hard to say that. And I hear in other people, but I don't want to exclude people. No, you do. You want to exclude everybody you don't want to work with and you can't help. Like, you need to tell them that's not for them. There's enough of the people out there that would fulfill an avatar. So an avatar is just the perfect client for you and your business and who you can help. Ultimately, it is literally the person you can help the best. Because if it's the person you can help the best, that's the most success you're ever going to have. But the key thing about, you can call it your demographic. I think people might know, it's the demographic that you work with, is absolutely understanding them. I could sit down and describe our avatar, our demographic to somebody to the point where they'll think it's a real human. Because in my head, when I'm writing any kind of sales copy, or I'm, better than that, when I'm, say, doing a podcast and I'm thinking of subjects to talk about, then I'm thinking of a particular person. I can think of it's literally now hundreds of people who come to my mind who are all nearly exactly the same person with the same fears, the same desires, worries, frustrations. I household setup, working type setup, day setup, everything about their lives they're all very different individuals. All humans are different, but they are all inherently so similar as well. When you've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people over 22 years, like I have, understandably people come in like, I'm very different. I do things a particular way. I'm very individual. I need something very specific to me. And I'm like, okay, yep, you did exactly the same thing that we did for the person who last came in. It just needs to be slightly different in this way. People are so different and then so the same. Humans don't realize that if they don't see the broad spectrum. There's nothing wrong with that. So as time goes on, we get more and more specific to the point where our avatar lives in essentially just 3 parts of the world. We can go find them in many places, but we look, it's just really 3 areas of the world that we look in, because they they're also our avatar, but also more receptive to coaching. So we could go and find our avatar in other parts of the world, but they are less receptive to coaching. So I could say the UK. Now I can say this because I'm from the UK. So generally speaking, if we find our avatar in the UK, they are less open to the idea of paying for coaching, basically. And I don't know what that is, but I can certainly say that because I suppose, I know what that feels like. I'm like, there's the mindset of, yeah, I'm just going to see how I can get on my own. And I would say to someone, okay, cool. How's that worked out for the last 6 months for you? Which is kind of like a joking, just a bit of a joking dig, isn't it? Because they've come looking for help in some degree. But ultimately, certainly speaking, our client base, we've coached a lot of people from the UK, but at the moment, no, I don't even know if we actually have any clients in the UK. We probably have a few, but we certainly haven't had any new ones for 6 months, I wouldn't have thought. So knowing that person, not only so you can speak to them through marketing channels, so you can get their attention, so you join the conversation that's already going on in their mind, and the goal of all of that is just to do three things: get them to know you, get them to like you, and get them to trust you genuinely. Like that has to be a genuine thing. So doing things like this is obviously part of that, putting out content that helps specifically the people that we work with so that they can see that, oh, okay, well, if they do this stuff for free and they just give it out for free, imagine what they could do for me if I was, actually one of their clients. And that's the actual truth of the matter, because someone comes in and we go, yeah, this is all the information you've got, but now look at all the rest that we can help you with. And if you don't know who your avatar is, one, you can't talk to them, so you can't attract them. So you're just now vanilla messaging across the world. No one's interested. But also, you can't build a program out, whatever that coaching might be, whether it's business coaching, whether it's whatever coaching, you can't build a program out that when you actually do get one of your ideal clients in and they get into the program, it then needs to feel that it was absolutely built for them and is built for them and will get them results. Because otherwise, you're then marketing something that doesn't work, which is, that's not going to go on for very long. So I suppose that's a sort of version of how we look at an avatar. There might be other people might have sort of different views on that, but the moment a business can move quickly through the idea of not marketing to everybody and actually speaking to one person, they're going to be more successful for sure.
And I think, we're all consumers, and think about the ads that really stick out to you. It's like they have said, hey, Scott, this product is for you because I know that you're going through X, Y, and Z, and hey, this is going to solve those problems. And you can't do that, to your point, by vanilla marketing. You got to have a specific person in mind. And it's funny, on our mastermind call yesterday, we were talking about avatars, and several people have names. They have named their avatar. It's Bubba, or it's Bob, or it's whatever. And so that's how clear it is in their mind. So tell me this. Personal training is very individualistic. And I would assume that most people think, hey, I want somebody standing there next to me, putting the weight on the bar, having me do the reps, and they can watch me right there and tell me what I'm doing wrong, and they can spot me, and they know who I am. How did you get past that mindset for virtual training?
Yeah, and this comes up a lot. So in my view, is standing next to someone still beneficial? Can be. Is it the best way for, again, so we come back to, is that the best way for our avatar, our demographic to be trained? Absolutely not. Here's the reason why. And I can say this because I personal trained people for 8 years. So here's a perspective into this. One, when I was personal training people, I wanted to do a really good job for them. That meant I would work out what the machine was going to be. I would set the machine up for them. I would load the weight. I would count their reps because I'm trying to do a good job. Okay. What I was doing was being a crutch for the clients I had, because what happened is I'd go on holiday, come back, and I'd be like, how was your training sessions last week? Oh, but we didn't come. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, we didn't really know what to do. And I'm like, I've just been showing you for the last 6 months. Like, no, you've been doing it. We haven't learned a thing. I'm like, So I was trying to do a good job for people, but actually not serving them because I was just doing everything for them. That's now every PT I've ever seen, because everyone's all setting up the equipment, putting the weight on because we want to do a good job. Also, in-person training becomes over-familiar because client comes in and they, my son, little Johnny's done this at the weekend, and we did this, and it's like, okay, that's all cool. Shall we go and do some squats, please? So it can get over familiar very, very quickly. Also, an in-person PT, generally speaking, can only look after someone for the hour that they're with them. Why? Because the PT has to move on to someone else for the next hour, someone else for the next hour. And, they're working on a time base. So in terms of the depth of things that we can help someone with, for the most part, an in-person PT just isn't able to do that because they're working 8 hours a day on 8 clients. We could be working on hundreds of clients, but the systems that we put in place, look after them on a 24-hour scale. So that's the other thing. Someone will come in and have their hour session with a PT. They think the hour is doing the job. What about the other 23? So we get people to not focus less on the training, but get less myopically focused on that 1 hour as being just the one thing that's going to do the job. It's, well, what are you doing outside of that? The other key thing here is, think of a busy business leader. Do they want to be bending their schedule around someone else? No, right? They want something that fits their life. Also, if we take where most of our client base is, they're big city areas. Now, the best PTs in their area should not have any spaces left. So if someone goes out looking for a PT and finds someone with space at the optimal times, there's a good chance, very respectfully, that's not the best PT in that town or city, because they shouldn't have time left. They should be fully booked up with a waiting list. If you think about it, because I was in my little town, I was fully booked up, had a waiting list. If you wanted to get to me before work and after work, you had no chance. You had to wait. So if those times are available, it tells me there's a fair chance that's not the best PT in town. It sounds a bit harsh, but kind of logical. Sure. And also that means, let's say you do happen to find a good PT that does happen to have the spaces. Well, you didn't get to choose the gym. You probably didn't get to choose the exact time. Maybe the travel to the gym isn't going to be particularly great. So in other words, what's happening is this busy business person is now having to alter their schedule, which is already probably very full, to fit around a PT, their working life and home life. Suddenly it doesn't make any logical sense. It's far, I think, and also, again, add on to that, most of the people we work with are traveling half of the time. So let's say they now do end up finding, potentially a great PT in a certain area, and then half of the week they're actually traveling. So that means for half of the week, they're out of schedule with their PT, which means, again, it's a system that just doesn't technically make sense. And I hadn't really thought of all this stuff until we started training people online. Well, I immediately started getting better results the moment I moved the business online, which I thought was very counterintuitive. But then I realized what was going on. And then as soon as we started looking after busy business people, again, straight away, people were saying, actually, this works so well for me because it's like you're always with me. It's like you're traveling around with me. It's like I don't have to be chained to any one particular place. And, that's the big difference. There's so many differences there. Now, having said that, I still train with people and I still, obviously offer advice and support when you're training with someone. But I think in terms of it being a full coaching-based solution for the busy business leaders of the world, in person doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it for me.
And so when you're dealing with these busy executives, what does the program entail? What are the different things that you do other than, I assume, provide workouts to them and advice?
Multi-layered. So of course, we look at the big rocks first. So nutrition, training, huge. Always going to be fundamental to everything that we're doing. But then underneath that, so if I think through one, in terms of the training, we analyze their movements. They can send videos into us and we can look at that and give actual individual advice. So again, that's one of the things people say, but you can't give advice on form. We're like, you can, you just record yourself on your phone, send us clips. We can give you feedback on what you're doing. It's no problem. We're making sure that 2 huge areas of life are getting managed, which is sleep and stress. Again, busy business leaders, sleep and stress, they're a mess for the most part. No, sleep and stress are bad. That means not only is progression in terms of a physical goal not great, but also overall recovery, overall cognitive health, longevity of health. Like these 2 areas make huge differences. So sleep and stress are 2 big areas. We're also going to be looking at, managing inflammation, working on gut health, hormones, the internal environment. We've also got a huge emphasis on accountability, external accountability. Everybody who's ever had accountability in their lives will attest to just how important it is. I mean, I'm reading a book at the moment called Relentless, which I'm sure you've probably heard of, which is by a guy called Tim Grover. There was a number of very famous sports stars coach, Michael Jordan probably being the first one. With Michael Jordan, probably the best basketball player that's ever lived, understood the importance of having a coach even at his level. I think the rest of us, minions, have something to learn from that pretty much. So the accountability aspect is huge because, we have a weekly check-in process, but we have I guess really a 360-degree wrap around our clients. So now, regardless of where in the world they are and where they are and when, we're still there on hand to be able to make sure that all of the plans that we put in place are implemented, aligned, because we're trying to align everything. It's one thing that someone says, I just need to get my nutrition in place. It's never just one thing. It could be nutrition. It could be stress, sleep, training, movement, posture during the day, breathing practices, meditation, all of these areas we can delve into, supplementation being another area. All of these areas we can delve into and align on a needs basis. So many things we might not deal with certain clients, and then other clients might need certain things. But the goal is that we come in and with all of these areas, take them off the shoulders of our clients. They're already busy. This is already a lot of stuff for people to think about. What we're trying to do is look, we'll be the caddy. Let us do the thinking. We'll just tell you what to do. That gives our clients mental bandwidth back to focus on work and to focus on family, because they're the two areas that they really want to be successful in. They're just trying to be a vessel to be successful in those areas for the most part, as well as wanting to feel good for themselves. But there's an inherent sense of social, societal, responsibility to be successful at work and to nurture and have be successful at home. So there's just a few areas like that. I think there's just a few sort of quick ones that we come in and again, we're looking to optimize for an individual. And again, that's very different for different people. Some people come in and, their stress, anxiety, or maybe pre-existing health conditions are literally a concern. And so we're going to come in and be like, okay, we're not here to replace doctors and physicians, but let us work in and around those people. But what we tend to be is a linchpin in the middle where we sort of pull all of the information in, and then we can give all of the advice leading back out from that. So it's a very much a 360 degree, I guess, holistic approach. A lot of people tend to call it. But again, leave no stone unturned. And again, be the last coaching company someone ever needs. So if we can fix all of those problems and leave someone in a position knowing how we've done it and how they can manage it going forward, that is literally how we can become the last coaching company someone ever needs.
And I will throw in a quick plug here. I've been a client for 4 or 5 months now, I believe, and I've been working with Ash. Ash is amazing. And one of the amazing things is he helps me plan out my week. He asks me, hey, when are you going to be out of town? So I need to edit workouts. If you're going to any restaurants for lunches, shoot me their menu and I'll give you suggestions on those things. And it just makes it easy. I don't have to think about that stuff. And as a business owner, decision fatigue is real. And so the less I have to think about that stuff and the less I have to look at a menu for the first time while I'm sitting there hungry, the better. So Andy, we are out of time. I thank you so much for you being on and the time that you've given us. Real quick, can you give me your top 2 or 3 books?
So right now, Buy Back Your Time. I'm going to forget the author's names. I'm really bad with authors.
We're reading it right now.
Buy Back Your Time. Are you? The blue
book.
That's brilliant. Buy Back Your Time. There's one that I read just before that was read that I can't think of what it was. But then I would say Traction.
Yep.
In terms of business building, Traction is amazing book. And then I guess because I'm only halfway through it and I'm obviously very late to the party, I'd say Relentless.
Yeah.
But I'm looking over at my book. In fact, I'll give you another one. Victory is another really interesting one, which is, again, I can't think of the person who wrote it, but it's a book that is drawing comparisons between great military leaders and campaigns and business strategies. Really interesting read. Very, very, very interesting. So that's a random one for you.
Awesome. Well, it looks like our bookcases are probably pretty similar based on the books that you just recommended. But Andy, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for everyone tuning in to the Driven Crowd podcast. We'll see you next time.